Hey, got bear's paws? Want some more? Listen, if you're ready to multiply your cotyledon tomentosa, then stick the around, because I'm about to show some pretty cool ways to make that happen. Hey there, I'm Smith Kingston, houseplant guru extraordinaire. Joining us today we have Kalanchoe, Toby McSchmuter, and the strikingly attractive Lady Space Cowgirl. Alrighty people, the way that I plan to proliferate this particularly pleasing pod of paws today is through the process of propagation from cuttings. And the tools necessary for expanding your collection of these cute little tender green fuzzy bunny bulbous bitches in this way are a pair of clean sharp pruning shears, a few containers, some quick draining potting soil, preferably a cactus mix, and all the necessary sundries for potting your cuttings once they've been acquired. You'll see why later, but I prefer to use a soup spoon, a paintbrush, and a serving spoon. Though many people prefer to use chopsticks and or a trowel. Here's the thing though, use whatever the you want. I'm not gonna tell you how to live your life. Oh, and if you've got a propagation tray already set up, maybe grab that too. Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that later. Anyway, it looks like we got our shit together, so let's party. Okay, lads and ladies, when you're ready to begin cutting, be sure to cut your plant at just the right spot. This means making the cut high enough up on the stem of the plant so that there are at least 2 pairs of healthy leaves attached to the stem of the mother plant below the cut and at least 2 pairs of decent sized leaves above the cut. Make your cut either exactly halfway between the 2 sets of leaves or at least 1/4 of an inch above the set of leaves below the cut. Listen, you don't want to shock your mother plant, so try not to hack her up too badly, but you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive if you're doing your cutting near the beginning of your plant's growing season. Bear's paw succulents are summer and winter dormant, and they do most of their growing during spring and fall. But here's the thing, the absolute best time to propagate bear's paw succulents from cuttings is in very early springtime. This will give your freshly potted cuttings plenty of time to grow roots before going dormant, and it will also give the lovingly mutilated mother plants plenty of time to grow new leaves and replace all the limbs that you hacked away during the propagation process. Yeah, lovingly. Anyway, once you've got your cuttings, cut, try to make sure you have between 3/8 of an inch and around an inch of leaf-free stem exposed at the base of your freshly acquired cuttings. This is probably going to mean breaking off at least 1 pair of leaves. Now, if you have a propagation tray, then this is a pretty good opportunity to use it. Hey, I use the term pretty good because while bear's paw succulents can be propagated from leaves, it is very difficult, it takes forever, and it is a highly inefficient way of propagating this plant. If, however, you do choose to take this trying and difficult path, then be sure to break your leaves free from the stem in a way that any damage inflicted on the plant is sustained by the stem and not by the leaf, because damaged bits of stem will scar over and send out roots. But if the leaves get damaged, especially at the base where they used to attach to the stem, then it's game over, bitches, as far as any hope of propagation from leaves is concerned. Anyway, since I've already got a propagation tray set up and I've got these leaves, I guess I'll go ahead and choose this trying and difficult path. Okay, now that we've got our cuttings cut and our stems exposed, it's time to prepare new homes for these fresh cut sweet green bulbous bitches. This means packing some quickly draining soil, preferably a cactus mix, into as many draining containers as you think you'll need. Leave maybe just a little over 1/4 inch between the top of your well-packed soil and the brim of your draining container. And yeah, I did say a couple times now to pack the soil. Listen, this last piece of advice may be considered by some to be more of a Smith Kingstonism and might even contradict some succulent care counsel that you've heard elsewhere, but here's the thing. If you're using a cactus mix in a draining container and watering the contents of that container correctly, even very well packed soil should drain more than quickly enough to protect the roots in your freshly occupied container, especially if that container is as small as any of these. While unpacked soil might drain just a little bit more quickly, it will settle over time and leave you in a situation like this. It should also be noted that this particular Smith Kingstonism is based on lots of experience. I've potted a lot of succulents this way, okay? Like a lot. Like an idiotically gigantic number of plants. Let's be real, I may have a problem. Anyway, from here, take your paintbrush, chopstick, screwdriver, ice pick, sharpened toothbrush handle, or I guess any tool you deem fit for the following procedure, and use it to prep a spot for your newly acquired fresh cut photosynthetic friends by jabbing it down into your potting soil. Then insert the stem of your cuttings as deeply as you can without burying the leaves, and repeat the process until your pot has been filled to capacity. Once your container has been filled, it's good to jab your paintbrush or chopsticks into the soil a few additional times in order to ensure that the potting soil gets packed up against the subterranean stems of each of your cuttings. Now, you may have heard that when propagating succulents from cuttings, it's best to let your cuttings dry out and scar over for a few days before potting them. And yeah, that's not a bad idea, but I prefer to pot my cuttings immediately after cutting them. The reason many prefer to allow their cuttings to scar over before potting them is in order to protect their cuttings from potential rot that may be sustained from exposing their plants' freshly exposed wounds to the moisture within the soil. Listen, this will not be a problem as long as you pot your cuttings into dry soil and give them plenty of time to scar over and form roots within the soil before watering them. Also, if your plant begins to form roots while above ground, you're going to have a very difficult time potting that plant without damaging those roots or straight up breaking them off. Also, any fellow procrastinators out there should be able to appreciate the value of getting shit done while you're in the zone as opposed to waiting around and potentially getting distracted. Yeah, potentially. Once you've got your bear's paw cuttings potted and ready to go, keep them in the brightest indirect sunlight you can find. Mature bear's paw plants can handle lots of direct sunlight, and while I do plan to get these fuzzy green bulbous bitches out into the sun eventually, bear's paw babies in this stage of development should be kept out of direct sunlight in order to keep them from burning up or drying out before they've had a chance to form roots and gain the ability to take in additional moisture. Once cut, the moisture that these succulents contain in their leaves and stems is all the moisture they have until they've developed their own root system. If kept in the right lighting though, they should be able to survive for months without drying out completely and should begin to form roots within a couple of weeks. As far as deciding when to water your freshly potted bear's paw cuttings, it's good to wait at least a couple of weeks in order to avoid any complications relating to, you know, all the shit that we just covered. I plan to water these funky fresh cut motherfuckers in 21 days. Another thing, it's best to chop the cuttings off the original plant between 3 and 6 days after having given that plant a good watering. This will ensure that the bits of plant chopped away from the original will be well saturated with water and should help to prevent the drying out of your freshly potted root-free cuttings during the window between their potting and their first watering. And if you're worried about changing the appearance of your original plant, I get it. But listen. Even though your plant may not be the dazzling doll of a fuzzy green beauty that it was before you started hacking bits off of it, sometimes sacrifices need to be made in order to, you know, propagate your Cotyledon tomentosa plants. And hey, eventually, if given the proper care, the lustrous wonders of your plant's former glory will be restored. Just have faith that eventually it will grow back. I have heard other YouTube plant care aficionados recommend the use of a rooting hormone for propagating bear's paws from cuttings. While I don't think that the use of a rooting hormone would necessarily hurt anything, it is not necessary as long as you do your propagating during your plant's growing season. It is also worth noting that we potted each of these cuttings into a draining container because we're not stupid herbs. Don't worry about it. Oh, and that leaf propagation tray that we used just a little bit ago, if you're interested in learning how to make and use your very own leaf propagation tray for propagating succulents, then check out this video where I get into all that shit. Hi, listen. Do you like bad graffiti, worse jokes, wacky macrame, and pretty good advice about taking care of your houseplants? Well then f***ing subscribe. Thanks, Chloe. That's right. Click that notification bell too so you never miss a new video.